Started. Welcome to Great Events. Our today's speaker is Dennis Dawson. He has been a Toastmaster for more than a decade. He's a past governor of District 57. Dennis is also a district champion for humorous speech, tall tales, and evaluations contest. He teaches drawing at local elementary school and volunteers as Santa Claus as at San Jose Christmas in the park. Please help me welcome the two-time distinguished Toastmaster, Dennis Dawson.
That's me. It always bothers me when I hear that introduction because that's literally everything I do. That's the whole thing, but that's okay. We're going to talk this evening a little bit about how to have the sort of meeting that attracts members and keeps your own members coming back. Now, let's talk about all the things we're going to talk about. I'm going to first start with the mundane things. Let's make sure that you're doing all the basic things right to run a meeting effectively. I will tap into the brain matter that we have here to get some collective wisdom. Then we'll talk about some ways to make your meetings more magical. Talk about the advantages of meeting online and hybrid. And we'll talk about how you convert those guests to members using these great meetings. So, once again, back to the basics. It's actually very easy, doable, and effective and fun to do things the way Toastmasters has always told us to run meetings. So the first thing I want to be sure of is that you've taken your club through the club quality checklist and ask yourself all of these questions. It's a 3-page form that you can go through. Ask questions about every aspect of your clubs, how effective the meetings are, how you're handling your members, whether you're achieving your educational goals, general things that you do to keep the club rolling. And I'll have links to all of these pages for you at the end of the presentation. But this is the place to start. Be sure that you're doing things the way Toastmasters expects a meeting to be run. And if you're at all confused about that, you can take your club through the Moments of Truth program. This is something you do once a year. It's a time for members to be honest with one another about what's working well with the club and what can be improved. So you have a general presentation where you look at all of the different aspects of it. Then you break into small groups and talk about actionable plans for how you're going to make your meetings more effective in the future. Another essential element to a successful club, I anticipate that everybody is involved with the Pathways program. To be very clear, Pathways is Toastmasters. Toastmasters is Pathways. Without Pathways, there's no value to a member who's paying their dues. If they just pay their dues and show up, and they don't use the materials, that means all they're really getting is a little social club, little gathering. They like to hear people tell funny stories, something along that line. That's fun. It's nice, but it's not the kind of thing that helps somebody to improve their public speaking and leadership skills. Nothing is going to help you improve more quickly than having prepared speeches with excellent evaluations based on the criteria of a Pathways lesson. It's educational for the speaker because they hear the evaluation. It's educational for the evaluator because they get the opportunity to speak and use their analytical skills. And it's educational for everybody in the room because they hear the speech, they hear their evaluation, and compare the evaluator's opinions with their own. If you don't have all three of those elements, then Toastmasters is no different than an Elks Club, a Rotary Club. They're a nice social gathering, but it isn't the educational experience that people pay for. Always remember that Toastmasters is a brand. Nobody has ever signed up for Dennis's Yakadoodle Club. They come here for Toastmasters because they recognize the name and they know that it is the kind of program that makes a difference in people's lives. So I can't stress enough, if you're not every member, every meeting, doing every speech from the Pathways program, then that's the first place you have to work on in order to be a more successful club and have a better quality of meetings. Now, you should check your club distinguished club program report periodically to be sure that you're doing all of the different areas that are important for club success. The first 6 points you get are all about education awards in the Pathways program. So this is what Toastmasters would tell you are 60%. The most important things that you need to be doing is being sure that people are earning their awards at all levels of the club. You need to bring in 8 members per year. You get 2 points for that. Why 8 members? Because if you've got a typical 20-member club, you can expect that 40% of the people will leave and you have to replace them. You need to have your club officers trained. You get a point for that. Why? Well, there's a direct correlation between trained officers and clubs that succeed. It's as simple as that. You have to turn in your membership list on time. You have to pay your dues on time. That's what keeps the organization as a whole running. So when you look at these areas, earning education awards, bringing in members, turning in your dues, and getting your officers trained, there's nothing magic here. There's nothing difficult here. Every single club needs to be President's Distinguished every single year. If you miss that mark, it means there's something wrong with the club that needs to be addressed. It means you're not bringing in enough members. It means that you're not achieving the educational awards. You're not achieving the club goal that you need to do. So be sure that you achieve the goals of the Distinguished Club program, not so you get a ribbon, but use this as a barometer. It's a bellwether to tell whether there's an area of your club that needs to be addressed. And if you address these areas every single year, your club is going to continue off into the future. If you say, oh, we're distinguished, that's good enough, that means your club has a pulse. Your club might last another year. No, you need to get all 10 of these areas every single year to have a strong, thriving club, the kind of club that people want to join. And you can achieve that by using the Distinguished Club program and the Club Success Plan document. That Club Success Plan takes you through every thing you need to do to plan out from July through June what you need to do to be a distinguished club. If you sit down and plan in July what you need to do, you'll usually find that you achieve all of your goals halfway through the year. If you just schedule in who's going to speak when, who's going to be able to earn their educational awards. So just sitting down thinking about it and planning it out throughout the year makes it so much less stressful than getting into April or May and saying, oh, gee, if Abhijit just gave 4 more speeches, we could be a President's Distinguished Club. And then he's got to get up every week and give a speech. No, that's not how to do it. Plan it over the course of the year so it's an easy, gentle process where everybody has fun, everybody grows, and you happen to achieve all of these goals. Another wonderful publication that tells you everything you need to know about how to run great meetings is the Master Your Meetings document. I always tell people, if you're having trouble with some sort of Toastmasters goal, please go back to the materials, read the books, try what Toastmasters advises you to do for 6 months. If it fails, then you can reinvent Toastmasters, come up with a wild new idea. But I guarantee you, if you actually follow the guidelines and the suggestions that Toastmasters gives you, your club is going to succeed incredibly, just based on 90 years of experience of running Toastmasters Club. And that's what you're going to find in these documents. So how do these basics really help? All right, well, let me ask you, are you having boring meetings? And it would be nice if people turned their cameras on. I can't see your faces, so I assume you're all fascinated by what I say. So if you're able to, please do turn on your camera. I would appreciate it. Now, is anybody struggling with boring meetings? You can unmute. No, okay, good. So everybody's having great meetings. That's nice to hear. One of the best ways to spice up your meetings, believe it or not, advanced pathways speeches. Instead of hearing everybody do icebreakers or doing a 5 to 7 minute speech on researching and presenting, how about one of these 20-minute humorous speeches? How about a panel discussion? How about a debate? These are all projects that are available to us in the Pathways program. But if you don't have people trying to earn their awards in the third, fourth, and fifth levels, then you pretty much see the same speeches week after week. This is why it's important to go all the way through the program. Are you having trouble bringing in members? Well, one of the things that I will come back to again and again, let me ask you, how often do you have to have an excellent meeting if you want people to join your club and stay in your club? How frequently? Is it every open house that you
Every
have to
meeting.
do it?
Every meeting.
Every single dingle meeting from now until forever, because you never know when guests are going to drop in. And if it's, oh, we have a guest, that's great. We were going to have speakers, but I decided not to speak after all. So we're going to do all table topics today. So yeah, welcome. Nobody's going to come back to a club like that. But you have a club that starts on time, ends on time, has great speeches, great evaluations, interesting table topics there in the middle. Someone's going to say, yeah, I'm going to come back next week. I enjoyed that. And if you have an excellent meeting the following week, you're converting them into a member. But if you trip up one time, that might be the time that you have 3 guests and the 3 guests never come back. So excellence, let's say, we are what we do regularly, therefore excellence is a habit, is the topic, the quote that I like to use for that. Having trouble with member retention, okay? Pathways progress. Why is that? Well, in the old manual system where you had the paper manual and you brought it in, you filled it in, everybody says, oh, I love that manual system, Pathways, yuck. Well, in that old system, in order to get your first recognition in Toastmasters, your first level, you had to do 10 speeches in the Competent Communicator Manual. If you have a typical club with 20 members, you're going to meet 50 times a year. Usually there's a couple of holidays where you miss a meeting, so that makes the math easier. 50 meetings, 2 speeches per meeting, 100 speeches per year, 20 members, everybody gets to speak 5 times. Divide that up equally, it takes 2 years for anybody to earn their first recognition in Toastmasters. Now, it doesn't actually work out that way. Some people like to give more speeches and they move more quickly, but that means people who are reluctant to give speeches move more slowly. And the truth is, in the old manual system, we had fewer than 20% of Toastmasters ever achieving level 1, ever completing a Competent Communicator Manual. Fewer than 1% ever went on to become distinguished Toastmasters in the old system. So this is one of the things they wanted to address with the Pathways program, is to make it so that people could track their progress on a more consistent basis. So you do your first 4 speeches, you pass level 1, you get some recognition. 3 speeches, you get level 2. 3 more speeches, level 3. You build up. You end up doing almost as much work at this point to get the Distinguished Toastmaster Award, but you get more recognition every step of the way. And that's what makes it a more appealing program for most members. If you're having trouble with your officers being motivated and doing their jobs in a way that's supporting the club, get your officers trained. For goodness sakes, be sure that they go to the officer training when it's offered. If your officers aren't able to go, you can still get credit for having officers trained by sending any member of the club and have them sit in and take the training. So it doesn't have to be the officer themselves even. If you've got 7 people who have been trained in how to run things properly, they can help your club to run things properly. You don't need to rely on certain officers if they're unmotivated or for some reason they're unable to attend. But there is a one-to-one correlation between success of a club and consistently having trained officers. All right. So that's the mundane stuff, the basics. Let's be sure that we're doing those things right. Now, normally I would be able to say, I, Dennis Dawson, having been in Toastmasters for 15 years, having been a district director, and all my wonderful achievements as a speaker, I could say, I probably know more about these topics than anybody in the room. I can't say that today because Solazar showed up, Mike Fidel is here, Abhijit is here, so I'm probably not the most knowledgeable person in the room. What I can guarantee you, though, is the knowledge of everyone in the meeting today far exceeds my own knowledge. So what I would like for you to do, please, is post your best idea in chat. This is your best idea for how to have a more effective meeting. And I'm going to wait for you to do that. Normally, someone like me would say, hey, there are no wrong answers. And I'll just say, if I see a wrong answer, I will call it out. For example, if somebody said, you know, a great thing to do is to take your club funds and go out and have a margarita party. That would not be a great thing to do.
Oh, okay. Let me not send that one then.
Yeah. Stop typing that, please.
But I want to point something out, Dennis, if you don't mind. This is Solazar for those, is that one of the things that Dennis represents is somebody who's taken the time to read and study and learn what Toastmasters offers. And that's available to all of us. And so when he comes here and he does this, he's sharing what Toastmasters has provided, but it's available to all of us. So I just appreciate that he does it. But and I think you're a great example of that, Dennis. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, I have drunk the Kool-Aid, and that was a kind way of saying it, Solazar. Table topics that are fun and creative rather than serious and too personal. I like that, Laureate, because I know what you're talking about. When you come in and somebody, it's nice to have a variety of questions there. I will sometimes ask very serious questions or a question that can be answered in a serious way, but you do have to mix it up with questions that are 90-degree angles, you know, things that take a wide turn off of what was originally intended with the theme or something along that line. Mike says to be welcoming to guests. Yes, absolutely. And we'll talk more about that, but it's not just welcoming, it's also making sure that they feel comfortable where they are. I often tell the story, when I was 6, I went to my grandmother's church one Sunday, and it was fine during the service, but then it was Sunday school time, and I was sent off to be with other kids my age. Well, when it was time to pull my chair out, I didn't know, and everybody looked at me like I was from Mars because I didn't pull my chair out properly. And when they sang their little song, I didn't know the words to this song that they sang every week, so I looked like an idiot. And I did what any self-respecting 6-year-old would do. I pretended I had a stomach ache. Now, stomach aches are important because if you have a headache, they say, well, sit down, relax, whatever. Say stomach ache, they think there could be vomit. And so they went and found my grandmother, and they got me out of that terrible situation as quickly as they possibly could. It would have been just fine if somebody had been nice to me and showed me how to pull out my chair. Or if they didn't treat me like I was from another planet because I didn't know their little Jesus song. So anybody coming into a Toastmasters meeting feels exactly the same way I felt when I was 6 years old. We sit there, we're constantly clapping like seals. We shake hands all the time, or we're bumping elbows. We have these rituals that are normal to us, but they look weird to anybody else. And all you have to do is explain why we clap. all the time. We clap all the time because one of the most frightening things for someone who gets into a real world speaking situation is the applause they receive just before they give their first major speech. And this is something Ralph Smedley saw all those years ago. People were great in a Toastmasters meeting, but when they went outside of Toastmasters, the applause frightened them so much, many times they couldn't get up and speak. And that's why we applaud after everything we do. We are so inured to applause that when we get into a real world situation, it has absolutely no effect on us. There's a reason that we do all these things in Toastmasters. When we shake hands at the front of the room, we do that so that everyone always knows who is in control of the meeting. As the Toastmaster, I shake hands with the speaker. The speaker is running the meeting. When the speaker is finished, I shake the speaker's hand and take control of the meeting again. I've accepted the lectern at that point. We know all of these rituals. If you explain those rituals to a guest during the meeting, you can do it in Zoom, you can type them a little chat. We clap like this in Zoom because it's American Sign Language for cheer. You pass along all those little details. Suddenly, instead of being a frightened 6-year-old who's an intruder, you've made them part of the inside crowd. They understand us. They know something about it. When they leave the meeting, they can tell their friends, they're kind of weird. They clap all the time, but I get it. I understand it. And that's how you start converting a guest into a member. All good stuff. These Google Forms. Ken, you and your Google Forms. God, I love them. You're absolutely right. It is so great to have this free thing available to us. You've got the spreadsheets, you've got the Google Docs that you can share any information out there with the world. They can get to it if it's appropriate. You can make it something they can edit. If it's just something they should read, you can only share it for the view capability. It's fantastic. Having an agenda, sharing it in the meeting format. You know, John, probably one of the best things about having an agenda is it means that somebody planned what's about to happen in the meeting. Would you agree with that? Yes. Oh, okay. It's all right. We're having a discussion. It's okay to answer in chat. That's fine, but you can answer verbally as well. Uh, yes, explaining the agenda to guests, great way to make them insiders as well. Really good stuff. Let's see, what did I miss? Yeah, Salters, that's a good point. Try to keep the members and guests active. Something that I've noticed in a lot of my meetings, it used to be that we had meetings where we had 30, 35 members in the club, meaning that 20 members would show up week to week. Well, since COVID hit, the entire organization has seen a real drop in membership. And my clubs have dropped members as well. And what happens is when you have a really big club, a lot of times you'll have uh, these extra roles that you create. So you don't just have a grammarian, you also have a word wizard who pays attention to the word of the day, and that's their only job. You might have somebody at San Jose Toastmasters, we've got an invocation, and we also have a thought of the day that comes at the end of the meeting. Well, that's great when you've got a whole bunch of people and you want to keep them all occupied. But you might find as your club shrinks in size, we anticipate that 60% of the active members are going to show up at any particular meeting. It could be that you have all these extra roles that were great when you had a huge club, but now you're having trouble filling all the roles at a particular meeting because there are too many out there. And of course, you want to fill the speakers, evaluators, and those core functionary roles before you fill all these others. So this is a good time if you're finding yourself having trouble filling out all of the roles in the meeting. See if you've got extra roles that are not really in the Toastmasters canon, and you can either combine them so that, again, the grammarian and word master are one role, the thought of the day and the joke of the day come from the same person, or you can have either or. But take out some of these auxiliary roles that people have been adding in with huge clubs so that it's right-sized for the club that you have today. And many clubs are sad because they had 40 members, they had 50 members, had 30 members, and they thought of that as being a great success. The trouble with having that many members is that you have fewer opportunities for people to speak. There are fewer opportunities for them to advance in the education program. So if your club has shrunk down and now you're closer to 20 members and only about 15 show up on a week-to-week basis, this is a perfect time for everybody to earn their Pathways Awards. They have more opportunities to speak. And don't be coy about this with your members. Don't try and sneak it by them or trick them into speaking more often. Have a frank discussion. Hey, everybody, we're a smaller club. This is a great time to earn our education awards. And by the way, when we earn those education awards, it means we have better meetings. When we have better meetings, people who show up as guests, seeing us work the Pathways program, decide that they're ready to join the Toastmasters Club. So if you want to build your numbers up again, have people see you actively working the Pathways program. Okay. So we have got our mundane meetings and everything's great. We've got our agendas. Everybody's signed up for their roles in advance. Everything is a well-oiled machine. Well, if you've got a well-oiled machine, you can start having a lot more fun with the kinds of meetings that you run. Now, every club has got a firebrand, somebody who is the spark that makes your meetings come to life. All right. So right now in San Jose Toastmasters, Abhijit, you're kind of the firebrand, bringing it. You're the one who encourages everybody to take on extra roles. But you remember Virginia?
Yes.
Who recently left. Virginia is the one who would mentor people as they were coming into the club. She kept these great information forms about how you perform every role, and she updated them regularly as they needed to change. In the meeting itself, she was a lot of fun. How about Barbara Bush? Is there anybody here who hasn't run into Barbara Bush at some point? Barbara is absolutely a lightning rod for Toastmasters. She is somebody who was a member of Sunnyvale Speakeasies when I was a member of that club as well. She was the sergeant at arms. When you walked in, you were greeted absolutely warmly, shown everything you needed to do. She was the firebrand who made sure that every meeting was just a great experience. So what if your club doesn't have a firebrand? Is there anything you can do? Good. I can anticipate that everybody's silence means that they are being introspective and they're thinking, well, gosh, maybe I need to be the firebrand for my club. Maybe I'm the one who can bring these new ideas. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk to everybody about doing a good basic meeting to be sure that we're ready to bring in new members. But after that, I'm the one who's going to have some creative ideas for how to have a fantastic, fun meeting. Now, it could be that this doesn't come naturally to you. Well, pretend to be the club firebrand. Just step into that role and try to fool people into having them think that you're excited about Toastmasters, fool them into believing that you have a great attitude, and just pretend to be the club firebrand. Do that for about 4 weeks and you will be the club firebrand. That's all there is to it. So feel free to fake it till you make it. All right. So to have a magical meeting, again, be sure that all the roles are filled prior to the meeting. And one of the things I encourage vice presidents of education to do, if usually we have at least 2 months of meetings available where people can sign in. If we get to 1 week before the meeting and there are roles that are not filled, as the vice president of education, I go down our roster and I plug people's names in. Now we have an automated form that gives a count for how many times people have fulfilled particular roles, so I can mix and match to be sure that I'm assigning them to a role that they haven't done in a while, to be sure that it's exciting for them to try a new role and exciting for the other club not to have to do that role because this guy won't do it. There. So that's a great way to be sure all of the roles are filled. Fill them in. And you'd think that people would object to that. But the truth is, if they're coming to the meeting anyway, you're just making it easier for them by signing them up for a particular role. I haven't had anybody complain about it in the past. Okay, Avi, you have a question?
There are two questions from Loria and Mike.
Oh, okay. Oh, in chat?
This is Loria. Yeah, my question was, isn't the VPE supposed to encourage the members to do their stuff? Basically be the firebrand you were talking about?
Yes, the Vice President of Education. So here we go. What does the president do in a club? Nothing, if they're effective. Presidents are there to be sure that everyone else is doing their job. So if the president isn't doing anything, who does everything in the club? And that answer is Vice President of Education. Vice President of Education is busier than a one-armed paper hanger, right? And it's not necessarily going to come natural to a person to be the firebrand for the club. All right. So it's great if you've got a Vice President of Education who's very excited about doing these sorts of things, but just because they have the title doesn't mean that they excel at the role. Here at Toastmasters, we don't go out and do executive searches to find the very best president, the very best VPE. It's just normal Toastmasters who, you know, their turn comes up and they get to do the job. So they'll do it with a variety of skill levels. What you can do is help the Vice President of Education by being a firebrand, or encourage the Vice President of Education to delegate certain aspects of their role, which is something every officer should do. So even though the Vice President of Education is in charge of everything, someone else can actually run the mentoring program for the club. Someone else can do the scheduling. Someone else can be the one who introduces people to the Pathways program and all of that. The Toastmasters recommends that you have an education committee. The Sergeant at Arms has a hospitality committee. The VP of Membership has a membership committee. These are all people that help you out. The other nice thing about having committees is that's where you're going to find the next Vice President of Education, the next VP of Membership. If you're Vice President of Education and you're great at it, there's a problem if you're so good at it that they won't let you stop being the Vice President of Education. It means you have to do all the work for the club. It also means that you don't get to try out the other roles or just spend some time being a POT, plain old Toastmaster there. So the only way you can advance or leave a role is to train your successor. And if you get the reputation of being really good at training officers within your club, then you can pick and choose the roles you want or don't want, and you'll always have roles that are occupied by people who are well trained and ready to do them. So yes, you're absolutely right. The Vice President of Education in a perfect world would be the one who encourages the members to do their stuff. But an excellent Vice President of Education is also someone who delegates those tasks to the right person and makes sure that the work gets done. Oh, and she asked a question and she dropped off. Well, she can look at the recording, I'm sure. Or do we have a recording? Are we recording? Well, that's funny. I don't see the
Yes, we are recording.
Good. Okay. I always like to go back and look at myself just to see how good I look. Okay. And there was another question, or that was the
Mike.
Well, I asked a question. You were talking about, I believe, one of your clubs, and I was wondering how often that club met, because I'm a VPE of two clubs, and one club meets every month. I'm sorry, every week, and the other is bi-weekly. And I could see there's different chemistry in any club, but the one that it really keeps me very busy is the weekly assignments. I go out, so okay, right now I have all speaking. So we have 2 speakers. This is the weekly club. I will have 2 speakers. They've all committed through the end of this year and the first meeting we have in January. I go get a Toastmaster and 2 speakers. Now, of course, things come up and sometimes we gotta go down to 1 speaker. I do not go around looking for backups, though I might ask for that. And sometimes I just jump in and give a speech if I have one handy. I don't know where I was. I forget that.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, it's depending on the club. Some are easy, some are very hard. And the thing I've noticed, I've seen it in the past where, okay, I've seen clubs saying, well, the Toastmaster is responsible for this. Well, yeah, there will be assignments by the VPE, but those were old assignments. And it's the Toastmasters to check with everybody and to find replacements. We don't practice that, but I've been to clubs that do. And there's such inconsistency in their meetings. Some get fun, some are horrible. They may spend 15 minutes trying to decide who's doing what roles.
Right.
So, I don't know where I was really going with that. I just was finding it interesting that you were using a club for an example for VPE involvement. And I'm just wondering how often that club met.
All of my clubs meet once a week. So, and I tremble for a club that meets bi-weekly because that's got a built-in problem. People are always saying, is this the week we meet? Oh, I don't think so. They miss a meeting. And when they do that, they've missed a month of Toastmasters.
Yeah, Dennis, I've never found that to be a problem. Well, actually, it may become one because we switched the times, but we very rarely switch the times. But the days have always been every other the first and third Thursdays of a month. And that goes back as long as I've been a Toastmaster, so 11 years.
Yeah. First and third is better than every other, for one thing. So
I see what you're saying. Yes, I should have said it better. First or third or second and fourth. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's all good. So, it's a good discussion, Mike, because you're talking about a lot of problems that come up. One of the problems that, especially if you're using software like FreeToast Host or Easy Speak to control your meetings, those are fantastic tools if everybody goes in and fills in their information the way they should and selects their roles, because then, boy, for the meeting, you just go in, you click a button, you print out the agenda, and you're ready to go for the meeting. But if you have that system and everybody doesn't go in and fill the information in for themselves, Easy Speak and FreeToast Host are a real burden for the Vice President of Education if they're going to go in and fill that information for them. So one way I get around that, I use a Google Sheet instead of those very good tools that require everybody to use them very well. The other thing is that I give people the opportunity to sign up for their roles, but if they don't, I sign them up for them. They have to tell us if they're not going to be at a particular meeting. That's one of the things that they sign up for. Anybody who doesn't sign out for a meeting, I'm going to sign them up for a role. Sometimes, yes, that means that that particular role doesn't get filled and we have to fill it at the beginning of the meeting. But generally what it means is at least most of the roles are filled, usually all of them. And when you've got all the roles filled, of course, you can start the meeting on a nice clip right off the bat. Timing is terribly important. There was a fellow who joined a meeting and he knew that he had an important sales meeting afterward. So he had to have a hard stop at 1 o'clock. So he went into this lunchtime meeting, enjoyed it immensely. They finished right at 1 o'clock on the dot. He went to a sales meeting. That man's name was Tevis Thompson. He went on to become an international director in Toastmasters. And if that meeting hadn't ended at 1 o'clock, he wouldn't have joined the club at all. But this is why it's so important to pay attention to these things, these minor details that actually have a huge impact on whether people join the club. Solazar, you had a comment?
Yeah, Dennis, I wanted to once again congratulate you, because I've noticed so many clubs are hesitant to assign members to roles. It's got to be all volunteer. It's got to be somebody has to say, I want to do that. I've just been dying to do this. And I think we're in this business here of Toastmasters, I shouldn't say business, to learn. And that means we're participatory in the event. So I just wanted to thank you once again for bringing out that assign people to roles. That doesn't mean they can all make it, but I think more clubs need to look at, if they're not doing that.
Yeah. Now, as the Toastmaster, it's really important that you keep the meeting moving. Always remember the Toastmaster is not the star of Toastmasters. They are the MC of the meeting. That means they're there to make everyone else look good. And when you're the topics master, that means that you ask short questions that allow for longer answers. A lot of times I'll go into a meeting and the question that the topics master asks goes on for 4 or 5 sentences. It's practically a paragraph, when all we really need to hear is silence is golden, or what's your favorite toy from when you were a child? A very, very short prompt that's open-ended and allows them to answer for the full 2 minutes at that point. Now, let's assume that in general, you're using pathways. You've got the speeches coming out, two or three speeches per week with evaluations, great table topics, everything's rolling along. Well, once a month, you should have a different meeting, a special one. We're going to talk about some of the things you can do. Very basic thing, change the layout of the room. A lot of times, the way people are sitting in the room is going to have an impact on how they engage with the meeting. So instead of having it always in a U shape, you can put it into rows. You can put it into circles. You can do anything that you can imagine that would give people a different perspective on the meeting. That you can have it so that the people who are at the front of the room are facing the audience, even though they're not speaking, and they can have the opportunity to see how people are reacting to the speaker up front. Now on Zoom, you can play with the background themes. You can have everybody choose their favorite fruit, movie poster, a different animal or a landscape, and use this so that when you look at the Zoom windows, everybody has got something on the same theme, but it's going to look different as you look from speaker to speaker. Fun thing to do is have a joint meeting with another club. This is especially easy to do in the Zoom world that we have here. So what you do is you invite them to come and participate in your meeting, let them take one of the speaker roles and the evaluator role, but in general, your meeting should be run the way you normally run your meeting. But then you reciprocate, you have all of your members go and visit their meeting at the same meeting time. And once again, you take a speaker and evaluator role, but in general, you let them run the meeting the way they run it. Now, what's great about visiting another club, you're going to see 10 different things that they do that your club never does. And you might decide, wow, they do this interesting thing. I hate that. Or we're going to steal that idea and turn it around for our club. This is how you learn to be an area director. Nobody is trained outside of Toastmasters to be an AD. You go visit a club, you see all the things that they do. You go to your next club, you remember everything you saw before, you look at all the stuff they do differently here, steal all the ideas. You go to the third club, you already have all these ideas that you can use to help that third club. And that's how you develop. Well, you can have that same experience for an entire club by having a joint meeting. Yeah, it's easy to find clubs that meet at the same time. It's fun to find clubs that meet at the same time in India or Australia, or you can have all kinds of interesting interactions by combining the club meetings. Now, if you're a kind of club where very often you don't have the roles filled, you can schedule the mystery meeting. What you have is a grab bag full of all the roles, and people choose their role one at a time. If you're meeting on Zoom, you can use one of those grab bag pickers that's going to pick random names, and people are assigned as Toastmaster, General Evaluator, Speaker 1, Speaker 2, Evaluator. Everybody's got to fulfill the role that they choose, and everybody then had better have a pocket speech ready to give. And they all have to be prepared to do any of the roles, because you're going to jump them in there. They're the topics master. They're going to have to come up with all the topics on the spot. It's a fun meeting, and everybody needs to be flexible on how well everyone is able to fulfill that role. But it can be, first off, a lot of fun. And secondly, it's a good lesson for everybody. This is why we prepare for our meetings in advance. You can have all kinds of crazy themes for the meetings. Now, my clubs have always got themes for meetings. And so it's not a new idea for me. If your club doesn't have a theme for every meeting, then that's something you can consider doing. Themes this time of year, it's grateful is a good one around Thanksgiving. Pumpkins, you can have the theme be movies. Theme might be history, something along that line. You just choose a theme that ideally you're going to have a speech or two that are along the same lines as the theme. You can have all of the table topics aligned with that theme. It's a good way to have a cohesive meeting. Everybody talks about the reverse meeting. Yes, I have been in a club that actually did it one time. This is where you start with the evaluations and then do your table topics. Then the speakers have to give their speeches, but they have to take into account what feedback they received during the evaluation. So if you said, oh, I love the way you coughed, but then you immediately recovered and we hardly noticed. Now the speaker's got a cough somewhere in the middle of the speech. So you can do fun stuff like that. And it, again, shakes things up, makes people think about their roles a little more. When I am proofreading a very important document, I will always read it backward, one word at a time. Because when you do that, you're really focused in. You're going to catch any misspellings. You also end up reading each sentence forward. You can't help but do it. So you read backward, forward, backward, forward. And when I do that, I'm able to catch all of my mistakes and improve my writing greatly by reading backwards. Same kind of thing can happen in a backwards Toastmasters meeting. You focus on the elements and get new insights. There is the costume party meeting. You can do it at Halloween, but you can do it any time of year. Have everybody dress up in their crazy costume. Easier to do, of course, in Zoom. And when everybody's dressed up and having fun, they go through the regular Toastmasters meeting, but you can do it in costume, and it's going to have an impact on how everyone behaves. The time machine. This is where you can either have people go back to different times individually, or say to everybody, hey, we're going to go back to Roman times. So everybody wear your toga, and we're going to speak in a way that sounds the way we imagine people spoke in ancient Rome. Okay, nobody's going to sit there and speak Latin unless you happen to have a very special Toastmasters club, but you can do the kind of Latin speech that they do in movies, that sort of thing. You can have debates. Now, a lot of people think that, oh, we're not supposed to have that kind of debate in Toastmasters. We're all supposed to be supportive out there, but of course you can have a debate. Choose a topic. You can have 2 speakers pro, 2 speakers against. You can have questions from the audience, then have table topics on the same speech topic. Great way to bring everybody together in your Toastmasters meeting and have them work on a skill. You can treat your entire meeting as if it were a TV newscast, where you've got the anchor and the reporters. The speakers then become reporters in the field, giving their breakdown of what's happening. All kinds of cool stuff you can do with that. A speech marathon, where you have 4 speeches in a row with 4 evaluations, particularly useful If you have a large club and you want to be sure that people are working their way through the program, you can uh, you can only get credit for one speech per one Toastmasters meeting, but you can have two Toastmasters meetings in the same day and have a person get credit for speeches in both of those cases. But again, it's good for the educational program, and it's also a way to get people more invigorated in the club. You can do a meeting completely in the dark. It's a lot of fun. When you take away the visual element, then listeners are able to hone in on the speaking pitch, pace, volume, and vocal pauses. So it's not something you want to do every week, but it can be a lot of fun. You can have a tall tales competition where everybody tells an exaggerated story for comedic effect. You can have a session where everybody during table topics says two things that are true, one thing that's a lie, and have the club guess at which is which. You can have a Hollywood theme where people have to speak again in the way that they would speak in a particular movie genre. So you can have a meeting where everybody is supposed to speak like they're from The Godfather, one where everybody is supposed to speak as if they're from Disney's Beauty and the Beast. So a lot of fun. Harry Potter, Downton Abbey meeting, a Game of Thrones meeting. Mix it up, have some fun. All right. Some things that are not best practices. Bells and whistles. There are some clubs that will use a sound effect when someone uses a filler word, or even when they use the word of the day. So a buzzer or a bell, something along that line, and they think it's a great idea. Unfortunately, it is not a very effective tool, and Toastmasters discourages actively the use of bells and whistles when people are speaking because it's too distracting. Talking about taboo topics, does anybody know which topics are absolutely forbidden in Toastmasters meetings?
Talking about my mother.
Yeah, well, I could say some things about your mother, Salazar. Now, the truth is there are no taboo topics in Toastmasters. Now, we are all adults, and we are expected to speak in a way that we're being respectful of the diversity of our audience. All of that is true, but you can talk about sex, drugs, rock and roll, you can talk about abortion, you can talk about religion, any of these things in a respectful fashion. So don't be shaming anybody for the topics that they choose in Toastmasters. Any topic is all right if they approach it appropriately. And you want to watch out for accidental meetings. It is fine to plan to have a meeting that is all table topics, but don't show up and nobody's got a speech and we didn't expect it. Now we've got to scramble to come up with table topics. Yeah, so plan one of these special meetings, but don't accidentally fall into it. And I mentioned before, don't ever spend club funds on parties. When you have given club funds to your club, that's the additional dues that you pay beyond the Toastmasters dues of $45. That money belongs to Toastmasters International. It does not belong to the club. It does not belong to the members. And you can only use that money for educational purposes going forward. If you've got a huge amount of money in your bank account, that's a problem. You should only have enough money to spend on your members this year who put that funding in there, okay? So what you want to do is figure out how much money you need to spend on the equipment you need and only bring in that amount in your dues and not build up a huge account. Okay, online meetings are actually kind of an advantage to us. It's an excellent time to bring in members because, again, they can be from all over the world. It seemed like Zoom was going to be the end of Toastmasters once we were split up this way, but 2 weeks into the pandemic, Toastmasters owned Zoom. We really understood how to have an effective meeting. We went back to our places of business and helped them to improve their meetings. Right now, people are getting involved more with hybrid meetings. And so the important thing there is to take the time to set up great equipment. You want to have more than one camera in the room so that you can see the audience and you can see the speaker. it's a great idea to have a good microphone. And one little tip, if you've got a microphone that you can tape down to a metal plate and point at a wall rather than pointing it at the speaker, you're going to get the sound as if you were in the same room there, the way it sounds to the people in the room, as opposed to having it focused just on the speaker. So you'll hear all the side chatter as well. It's just a little tip out there. But do play with it and make sure that it's a comfortable experience for people in the room and for the people at home. Converting guests to members. As was already suggested, of course, you greet them warmly. Having a sergeant at arms is essential in your club. Online, they're the one who can send a private message. Hey, welcome to the club. If you have any questions, you can send them to me. I'll explain what's going on. Again, during the meeting, you say, yeah, we do this because that's American Sign Language. You continually feed that to them. If you've got more than one guest, assign the guest to another officer in the club. So first it's the vice president of membership, then the vice president of education. After that, go to the VPPR, go to the secretary, and assign the different guests to their own officer who's going to help them out throughout the meeting. Be sure that the guests get a chance to introduce themselves at the beginning. Give them an opportunity to get their email address to you so you can contact them afterward. Be sure they're involved in table topics if they're comfortable with it. And at the end, ask them for their feedback. Most importantly, you finish up with 3 questions. What did you think of the meeting? Do you have any questions about Toastmasters? And you answer them. And the third one, would you like to join our club today? That's the one we're always afraid to ask. And many times people would join weeks earlier if anybody had bothered to give them the opportunity to join the club. So it's always, what did you think? Do you have any questions? Would you like to join our club today? Because we're not selling Amway here. We're not going to bilk them out of anything. We're selling them a great opportunity that we all enjoy ourselves and we can all share. Welcome people to visit as many times as they like. Don't have a restriction to the number of times they visit, but they can't sign up to speak until they become a member of the club. Involve them in lightning slides and table topics, all you'd like. If they're a member of another club and they show up and they're willing to fill an empty speaking slot, that's okay. Let them speak. And keep in mind that everyone is watching. Don't make special exceptions for one person that you wouldn't make for everyone in your club. And again, even if they're a member of another club, would you like to join our club today? There's no reason that they can't sign up for 2 clubs. I personally belong to 4. Now I know, Abhijit, you have to leave, but I am now at the Q&A session. I'm glad we've had some good participation throughout, but does anybody have a final question before we wrap up? Going once.
Dennis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One of the things I like that you shared, and I would encourage people to put them together, is that ask somebody, would you like to be a member of the club? And whatever they respond, say, you're welcome to be a guest as often as you like. So again, make sure that they're removing that idea of pressure. So I like the idea you phrased that, but I would encourage people to throw them together. It's kind of like one routine, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure I do that, and I probably didn't make that clear.
Yeah, no, I'm
But
positive you do it. But this was really great. I love what you shared. And even as Mike said, many good ideas. Yeah.
Great. Well,
Yes, I wanted to stand in for Abhijit and say thank you, Dennis, for doing this, imparting your knowledge. You are the wise man in the room, and we are all thankful for your time and your expertise. And I wish everybody to, if you turn on your cameras and give them a Toastmasters clap for and like this. That's right. Thank you, Dennis.
well, thank all of you for coming tonight and listening to me jabber. You know that there's nothing I love more than the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and it's really good training. So thank you so much. Can't wait.
All right. Well, everybody go off and have some dinner and watch some TV, just the way I will. And I'll see you all soon.
Thank you again, Dennis.